Good evening and welcome all after a short tea break. Today the speaker is very well-known speaker. His name is P.V. Srinivasan. I would request the chairman, Srinivasan sir, to accompany the today's speaker and welcome him with the floral bouquet. Welcome, sir. Just a brief introduction of today's speaker. He is a C. Srinivasan PV. He is a corporate advisor on global tax and corporate laws, and he has a PBS advice as his firm. And his experience is very vast, spanning over decades. And particularly, I just give a very brief introduction of Sir. He has participated as a member of the Emerging Issues Task Force on Non-Resident Taxation formed by Ministry of Finance, Government of India, and he was appointed an ASCOM representative for resolving issues in a Japan tax treaty. And he has been a chairman of India Taxation Committee of Bangalore, Chamber of Commerce, and he has contributed in many technological initiatives like Simplified, GIA and Tax Sutra. With this brief introduction, I welcome the today's speaker for today's session. The session is Taxation on Investments, Cross-Border Transactions. Please give a great round of applause for today's speaker. Thank you.
Friends, we will use next 90 minutes or so, maybe a little less. I will give some time for question and answer. Please stop me in case you have not understood something. I will help you to understand better. The question is difficult. We will pose it to the audience to get a common answer. Somebody will let us know. So, we are today going to have a topic. This title is Taxation of Investments and Cross-Border Transactions. So, the limits are fine. It must be related to investments and it must also relate to cross-border. So, we are not going to talk only about investments. We are going to talk about the issue where investments and cross-border transactions are involved together. So, it's cross-border investments is what we are going to speak today, and that is the way I have structured my presentation. This is a very simple slide, but it captures the essence of income tax. Not only in India, it is the global income tax principle, the way we have to understand it. Normally, source of income is identified in three parts. The source is within the country, or the source is deemed to be within the country, or the source is outside the country. Only three things can come as far as the source of income. It is within the country, or it is deemed to be within the country, or it is outside the country. If you look at our Income Tax Act also, there is a source within the country. We say accrue arising within the country. Then the deemed accrue and arising within the country. Then sources which are outside the country. In fact, the resident non-resident taxation itself is based on this concept. If you look at on the right side of the slide, the residential status are essentially two, resident and non-resident. RNOR is a derivative of resident. They are about to become resident, but in the interim they are called RNOR. But essentially the status is only two. Either you are resident or you are non-resident. So what is the combination we will get out of this is that a resident will be liable to tax on all the three sources, within the country, deemed to be within the country and outside the country. But when it comes to non-resident, he will be liable to tax only on two aspects, those which are sources deemed to be within the country and those who are sources within the country. He will not be liable to tax for sources outside the country. So this is how the principles of taxation have been evolved. Section 5, read with Section 6, read with Section 9, and read with Section 4, which is the charging section. You will find this conclusion under the Income Tax Act. This possibly is the conclusion under the global law itself. You take any country, possibly you will have this scheme of taxation in a worldwide taxation for residents and within the source country taxation for non-residents. This is how the scheme of income tax works, and this is how our act is also constructed. So if if I have to look at cross-border transactions in the context of investments, there are two possibilities. One is an inward investments, the other is an outward investments. Inward investment is those investments which come into the country. The investor is outside India, he makes investments in India, and the investments here, we are not looking at investment in projects, we are not looking at investment in businesses, we are looking at investment in financial instruments. So he makes an inward investments in financial instruments. Likewise, when a resident makes an investment outside India, when a person who is resident in India makes an investment outside India, it's called outward investment. So in the cross-border transactions, two kinds of investments have been looked at. It can be an inward investment or it can be an outward investment. Now in any investment, what is that we have to look from a taxation aspect? We have to know what will be the tax impact of that investment. How do I assess the tax impact? There are measures to do that. Normally what you understand is that what is an investment income? Investment income normally understood in global context. Even in the Income Tax Act, if you see the word investment income is used in some sections, it comprises of two levels of income. While you hold the investment, two levels of income can come to you. Either it's a dividend or it's an interest. So whenever you are holding an investment, two kinds of income gets generated. Either it can be a dividend or it can be interest. When you divest or transfer the investments, a third kind of income can come, that is called capital gain. So whenever you have got investment, we have to be worried about three aspects. What will be the nature of income, whether it's dividend or interest, and what will be the nature of taxation on such income, how dividend will be taxed, how interest will be taxed, and the third one is how capital gain will be taxed in the event of divestment. These are the three aspects we look at. But our act has got one more angle to it, valuation. When money is put in, is there a valuation issue which has to be done? When the transfer is made, whether you have to look at valuation issue as one more, because at the point of collecting money itself, there may be agreement of taxation. At the point of divestment, there may be rules for valuation that you have to value it at a particular level, below which you cannot do the transaction. So, we have to do four-pronged inquiry about any investment. What will be the nature of income, dividend or income while you hold it? What will be the nature of the income while you divest it, that's capital gain, how it will be treated? Then we also have to look at how the valuation will be done. What is the source of dividend? Because the earlier slide we have looked at, you have to know within the country source, deemed to be within the country source and outside the country source. How do I know what is the source of income, source of dividend? A dividend, here dividend is not looking at a reward, here the dividend is a statutory dividend. That means a dividend which a company would declare. So it has to be a company. We are not looking at ordinary dividends of what's called rewards of work. We are looking at dividend as a statutory statement that it arises out of shares. So what is the dividend? What is the source of dividend? Source of the dividend is the company. How do I know which country it belongs? You have to go to the country in which the company is incorporated. Under whose laws the company is incorporated. If you are able to ascertain that, you will be able to know the source of dividend. So normally you associate dividend as a source to a company. The company where it is incorporated will be the source in which the country source from which the dividend is derived. So if you have a company in India, it is registered under the Companies Act 1956 or 2013 as the case may be, and that company declares a dividend. What will be the source of the dividend? It will be India, because the company is an Indian company. It is incorporated under the Companies Act 2013, and therefore the dividend emanating from that company will be sourced in India. Likewise, if you have got a US company incorporated under the US law and that company declares a dividend, it will be a source of income from USA and it will emanate from USA. We are looking at the source of dividend. The recipient of the dividend can be in another country, so we have to look at the angle as what will happen in the paying country what will happen in the receiving country. So whenever you are looking at investments, you have to look at the two aspects. What will be the nature of the taxation in the paying country? What will be the nature of income and how it will be taxed in the hands of the receiving country? So you have to see in the source of dividend, the country in which the company is incorporated will be the source. Is there a varying concept to this? Is there a different way of looking at it? Treaties don't look at it, incorporation always. Some treaties do. Some treaties say, please look at the company where they are resident. If a company is resident in India, then the source of income from the dividend from that company is India. If the company is resident in the United States, the source of income from that company is United States. So you have to look at two concepts. Incorporation is one concept. Resident of that company which is issuing the paying the dividend is the second concept. Treaties look at the latter. The domestic law will look at the former. If you look at the Indian income tax, as we go along, we'll see what is the company, how dividend has to be taxed. We can look at it. The next level is the interest. What is the nature of, where is the source of interest? The source of interest is the person, the debt instrument, where it is located. It will again go to the issuing company which is doing issuing authority or issuing institution, or where the payer is located. If you look at the treaty, it will look at the payer. If you look at the domestic law, it will attach to the debt. So the source under the domestic law is the debt. The source under the treaty law is the payer. So you find that the mechanism of source is slightly different from the treaty to the domestic law. The last one is capital gain. Where is capital gain located? Let me take a small poll. Is share a tangible asset or intangible asset? Anybody can give me an answer. Tangible? Intangible? I would give an argument that it's intangible not because it's held in mutual funds, dematerial form. That is only a form of holding. Even if you hold it in physical form, it is only an evidence. Share per se is an intangible asset. Where will intangible asset get located? Intangible assets get located where the holder is resident. So, under the international understanding, a share is located wherever the holder is resident. Suppose I am a holder in the United States, I am a resident of United States, I hold the shares in an Indian company. Where is the share located? As per the US international understanding, the share is located in the United States because I am holding the share. I, P.V. Srinivasan, a resident of United States, is holding the shares of an Indian company. The share is getting located in the place where I am holding. So that is one argument, that the share is located where the holder is resident. Another argument is that the share is located where the company which has issued the share is incorporated. So the asset, if you look at the Indian law looks at it based on location of the company. If the company is located in India, the capital asset is also located in India. If the company is located abroad, the capital asset is also located abroad. So Indian law looks at it based on situs, that is called the location of the share. And this location of the share is attached to the company. But under international law, many countries recognize the share to be located in the place where the holder is resident. So if you have a situation that I am a person who is resident in the United States, I hold shares in L&T Limited. For a moment, I am just giving a name for ease of understanding. Where is the share located as per Indian law? India. Where is the share located as per the US law? USA. That means the source conflict comes. As per the US law, the source of income is within the United States. As per the Indian law, the source of income is India. That conflict needs to be solved. The treaty may help you to solve that conflict, or it may not help you to solve the conflict.
Is this for exactly for this reason where a US citizen is taxed for his global income? Even say a US citizen has some earnings in India or any other place, he is taxed for his global income.
It is. See, there are many countries which follow worldwide taxation on residents and nationals. US taxes based on nationality, and citizens, if I have to say, and number two, it taxes on resident. India also taxes on global income, the worldwide income. So there is no difference between the US law and Indian law. But the difference between the two laws is how you look at the source. What is within country source, what is outside country source. If it is an outside country source, you have to give foreign tax credit. If it is within the country source, you don't have to give foreign tax credit. That's the only difference. If it is a source within my country, why I should give a foreign tax credit for a foreign source? So in this example which I gave you, the share of an Indian company L&T, the person is resident in the United States, US will claim that the source is in the US, India will claim that the source is in India. So whatever tax you pay in India, US may deny a credit for that, saying that it's a US source income and it's not Indian source income in their understanding, and therefore foreign tax credit may not flow through in that context. So it is not important as to whether it's a worldwide system or not. What is important is whether the country is going to tax it. If they tax it, whether they will give you foreign tax credit if there's a double taxation. Because in cross-border, there are only 2 or 3 principles can come. Either one country chooses not to tax, or both countries tax and the resident country gives you a credit. To get a relief, either one country, the resident country should choose not to tax and allow source country to tax, or the other alternative is that both countries will tax and the resident country will give you a credit. For you to get a credit, the resident country should acknowledge that the other country or the foreign country had a right to tax. If they don't acknowledge that as per their laws, then foreign tax credits will become a challenge for you. You will be in double taxation. If you suffer 2 taxations on investment income, maybe your investment itself is not viable for you, and that is the outcome which will be. That is why I took at the source principles here, saying that if the source conflict comes, then you have got a problem. That is why you find there are 2, if you see dividend, it will coincide more or less. Place of incorporation and place of residence, should it coincide? It may not. If you apply place of effective management under the Indian law, the company may be incorporated in a foreign, say Singapore, but its place of effective management is in India. Where is the place of residence? It will shift to India. So you have got the incorporation in Singapore, but residence in India. Treaty will apply the residence principle to determine the source for dividend, but Singapore will apply the source principle to apply the source of dividend. So you have a conflict. Incorporation and place of residence need not always match. Many cases it will match. In some cases it may not match also. So you have got a conflict in source as far as dividend is concerned. Likewise, you have got a conflict in source as far as debt is concerned. Interest need not be. The location of the debt can be different from the location of the payer. If the payer and the debt are not located simultaneously, you will find a conflict. The domestic law will recognize debt as a payer, the location of the debt as the source. The treaty law will look at the payer as the source, and therefore you find there's a conflict. Likewise, in capital gain, the domestic law will look at the capital asset, where it is located. The treaty law will look at where the person is resident. For example, India-Mauritius treaty classically had shifted the location to say Mauritius by saying that only Mauritius will have the right to tax, India will not have the right to tax, because they said the person wherever is alienated as resident, that person is that country is what is eligible for taxation. So you find that this one slide itself has aroused your interest in some way, that what looked like a very simple slide has thrown out all the complexities we can think of. There are only 4 sources of income: dividend, interest, capital gain, and the 4th one is valuation. We will come to valuation a little later. 3 sources of income. You have got conflicts already. The domestic law looks at it different way on the source. The treaty law looks at it different way on the source. And how do you resolve that? The treaty may provide a mechanism to resolve the conflict. Some treaties don't. For example, the India-US treaty, whenever there is a source conflict, the India-US treaty is not applicable. Whenever there is a source conflict, the India-US treaty abates for that particular transaction. So you cannot apply the treaty. You have to go through only mutual agreement procedure to solve the source. So this is the principles I thought I will lay out, that you must know the source under the domestic law. In a cross-border situation, domestic law alone may create multiple complications. The only way you can solve source conflict is through the treaty. If the treaty also does not solve it, then you have to solve it only through mutual agreement procedure. The mutual agreement procedure is a compromise sometimes. They may give it to the facts and say, okay, the dominant economic interest is here and we will give the source to that country. That may be a mechanism of solving it. So this slide is important in cross-border transaction, that it sets out the context as to how you look at the source and what conflicts can emerge on the source. Now I will come back to company. Dividend, I said, must be relatable to a company. It is not yield or it is not dividend for crop, it is not dividend for efforts, it is a dividend, it is not what's called our democratic dividend, what's called demography dividend and so on. So these are colloquial terms. The dividend here we are referring to dividend from company. What is a company? The moment I say dividend from company, I must know what is a company. Treaty will not define a company. Treaty will talk about one enterprise contracting with say that state, it will not talk a company. Company has to be looked at only in the domestic law. In India, Indian Income Tax Act has defined the term company. Any body, an Indian company is a company. Now, Indian company is a term which is defined, so I highlighted it. Rest of the things is not very important. So, three kinds of companies can come. One, a company which is an Indian company is a company. A company or body incorporated outside India is also a company. If you are incorporated as a company, it is a company. Third one, the board may declare some of the institutions, bodies, associations as a company. I have not seen an occasion where the board has invoked this power in any case. But so we are left with only two categories of companies. Those companies which are Indian companies and those companies which are incorporated outside India, therefore a foreign company, a body corporate incorporated outside law. So a company has to be understood in the context of the definition here. If it is an Indian company, then all these concepts of the earlier slide will have to be looked at as well as the source. If it is a company outside India incorporated, we have to look at all these concepts having regard to how you look at the source for an outside company. Then domestic company, another term which is defined because certain treatment of taxation is based on domestic company. Certain taxation principles apply only to domestic company. They are Indian company, but domestic company is one which is an Indian company first, and it has made arrangements to declare dividend out of India, within India. So this is how it has been declared. So any company which is declared incorporated under the Companies Act will be a domestic company because it has made arrangements to declare dividend from India. And the principal office or registered office will be in India. You have to give the principal office in India, otherwise it cannot be incorporated in India. And therefore you find any company registered under the Companies Act. If it is not a foreign company, the Companies Act also allows a foreign company to register, but that will be only a branch. They will not allow the company to be registered. So you can find that the domestic company means a company which is an Indian company and has made arrangements to distribute dividend in India out of profits which are liable to tax in India. So this is how a domestic company has been defined. Then we need to know what is a foreign company. Anything which is not a domestic company is a foreign company. So if you understand domestic company, you would have understood foreign company also. Last one, what is an Indian company? The Indian company is very simple. We don't have to go through complicated definition. If it is a company incorporated under the Companies Act 1956 or any other law dealing with incorporation of companies, so 2013 is also covered there, automatically it will be an Indian company. Any company formed under Central, State or Provincial Act is an Indian company. Any company formed under the laws of Jammu and Kashmir is an Indian company. Any company formed under the laws of Union Territories which are specified there is an Indian company. So you find the Indian company is automatically one which is incorporated under the laws of India. If a company is incorporated under the laws of India, it will be an Indian company. So what is that we have to understand? We have to know what is a company. Company can be an Indian company or a company incorporated outside India. Within Indian company, you have to come into domestic company, which is nothing but an Indian company but made arrangements for declaring dividend out of India within India. That's the second part. Third part is a foreign company is a derivative of Indian domestic company. What is not domestic is foreign. The last one is how do we understand an Indian company? Anything incorporated under the laws of India will be an Indian company. So if you know these four concepts, where is that we are going to use, we will go as we go along. So the first four slides, I have laid out the concept of how we are going to look at the entire framework of the law. So what are the three sources of income I laid out? Dividend, interest, capital gain. So we have to look at the taxation of dividend, interest and taxation, capital gain. For dividend and interest, we will look at it from the angle as to what will be the paying country's obligations, what will be the receiving country's obligation. So taxation will be both sides. There will be taxation in the country where the dividend is originating, and there will be taxation in the country in which the dividend is received. So how Indian Income Tax Act is looking at, let us look at the dividend. What is dividend first? We have to know what is dividend. If I don't know what is dividend, then I will not be able to understand. Is the treaty understanding of dividend the same as the domestic law understanding of dividend? Domestic law defines dividend under section 222. We don't have to go into the details of this definition because that will be study in itself. What we need to know is that if there is a company and it declares dividend, it has accumulated profits and the assets of the company are distributed to the shareholders, then it would amount to dividend. So whenever you see, when you say company has declared 2 rupees per share dividend, what it means that the company has assets in the nature of cash, it has accumulated profits, it has decided to give 2 rupees per share to the shareholders, and that constitutes dividend. What is the release of asset? The cash is the release of the asset. The company is releasing cash to the shareholders, determined at the rate of 2 rupees per share, and the dividend goes to the shareholders. So what are the conditions of dividend? Number one, the company must be having accumulated profits. Number two, it must choose to release the accumulated profits as assets of the company, and it must be given to whom? It should be given to shareholders who are entitled to that dividend. This is the simple concept of dividend, that the assets of the company out of accumulated profits are given as in dividend. But if the definition were to be so simple, then we can have a complete understanding. We have very intelligent mechanism. What we will do, what happens in the event of liquidation? Suppose instead of giving cash, I create debt, saying that I will issue debentures of the company to my shareholders. I don't give cash today, I create a debt obligation. Debenture is what? I accumulate a debt. I acknowledge that I am creating a liability for myself, and I will discharge that liability in the future. So the company law says that if a company creates a debenture, issues a debenture, to the extent it has got accumulated profits, then that debenture also will be treated as a distribution of asset. Likewise, in liquidation, in reduction of capital, to the extent there are accumulated profits, they will be treated as dividend. So these are all slightly complicated examples. Essentially what you have to do, if there is a shareholder and the company releases assets in one or more forms of releasing, whether it may release today or may agree to release tomorrow, whatever is the obligation, all these are dividend under the domestic law. And this is how the dividend is defined under the Indian law. What will be the treaty? I have just picked up the India-US treaty. No different. The understanding of dividend under this concept is also similar. Only one difference which may come, I will possibly take you through. Income from shares or other rights not being debt claims. So it should not be a debt-related claim. If there is a debt-related claim, it will be interest. So if it is not debt-related, it will be dividend under the treaty also. Other corporate rights, for example, certain bonus shares also may be treated as dividend in certain countries. In India, we don't treat bonus share as a dividend. In certain countries, even bonus shares can be treated as dividend. In certain countries, even right shares can be treated as dividend if it involves release of assets of the company in a constructive manner. So, certain amounts of, for example, even bonus shares, US may treat it as a dividend in that country. What is that? In a bonus share, what they have done is to issue more shares, capitalize the reserves into some kind of a share capital and premium, or fully paid share they have done, and they have closed it. Still, it may be treated as dividend in certain countries. The last one is income from arrangements including debt obligations carrying the right to participate in profits. So, if you have got preferred shares and they have got a right to participate in profits, or you have got only preferred shares, certain preferred shares may be looked at as debt under the treaty because they are fixed preference shares, they are redeemable preference shares. So you may have to look at under the Indian law, preference share dividend is also dividend. Under the treaty, preference share dividend may qualify not as dividend, it may qualify as debt under certain treaties. So we have to see the treaty to see what is the treatment of preference share dividend. If they are participative, it is dividend. If they are not participative, it may be qualifying as debt. I am not saying it will. We have to look at the treaty language. Some treaties may classify a preference share as a debt, and therefore it may likewise a participating debenture may be classified as equity. If you have participating debenture, it may be classified as equity under the treaty. So domestic law is not as complicated. Treaty can slightly get more complicated on treatment. Now we will come, when is dividend taxable? First question we have answered is, what is dividend under the domestic law, and we have looked at the treaty. They are not the same. Dividend may not be the same. The domestic law may treat something as dividend. The treaty may treat it as differently as dividend. It's not all, there is no exact overlap between this. There is substantial overlap, but treaty is slightly different on dividend treatment compared to dividend under the domestic law. So you may get a relief under treaty. What will the treaty do? Treaty cannot create a liability of tax. Treaty can only relieve the tax. So if the treaty benefit is better than the domestic law benefit, you can apply the treaty to say this is not dividend, this is interest, and therefore it should be liable to tax, not liable to tax. All those issues you can take. Likewise, you can say this is not interest but this dividend, and therefore I should be entitled to some participation exemptions, and all those things can be claimed. So the treaty defines dividend slightly differently from the domestic law. We must compare the two definitions. We may find that the treaty is better placed than the domestic law. You can apply the and get a better relief in a cross-border transaction. Then, when is dividend taxable? Now I have understood that it is dividend for a moment. I must know when it is taxable. Under the domestic law, Section 8 deals with the taxation of dividend. It says that for the purpose of inclusion in the total income, any dividend declared by the company, distributed or paid by it, would be the final dividend is when it is declared, distributed or paid, whichever is earlier. So if the shareholders declare it in the month of on 31st March, but it's actually distributed on 1st April, when will be the dividend received? Because the shareholders have declared on 31st March, it will be a dividend of the year ending 31st March. Just let us take the example 18-19. 31st March 19, the shareholders declare dividend. It is distributed in the year 1920. So when will be the dividend accrue as your income? It will not be the year in which you receive it. It will be the year in which the shareholders have declared. When the shareholders have declared in this example, they have declared in 18-19. So whichever happens first, interim dividend will get declared later because the shareholders may approve later, but the board approves it immediately. So whichever happens first, declaration, distribution and payment, whichever event happens first, that is the event, that is the date on which the dividend gets received or is liable to be accounted for tax purposes. Interim dividend is always when it is irrevocably laid out. If the board declares an interim dividend, it will be treated as it is irrevocably laid out, and the shareholders may eventually reject the interim dividend. Today the Companies Act doesn't allow. Earlier Companies Act allowed rejection of interim dividend announced by the board. Today the Companies Act does not allow that. But essentially interim dividend is when it is irrevocably made available to the shareholders. Final dividend has to be accounted when it is declared, distributed or paid, whichever is first. This is the method of taxation of dividend. What is the treaty saying? Dividend paid by a company which is resident of a contracting state. So you find very complex words which are used in the domestic law are not found in the treaty. Treaty uses a single event called paid. When is paid to be applied? The paid here should be an event of distribution. So declaration, distribution, when three events are involved, declare, distribute or paid. When three events are involved, distribute and paid, what is the difference? distribute can be in asset form. I can declare dividend in asset. For example, I have stock. I can give stock as a dividend. I mean, I have stock in trade. I suppose I am a company, mobile company. I am manufacturing mobile phones. I want all my shareholders to hold a mobile phone. So I can say I will issue mobile phones as dividend. So that is called distribution. But if cash is paid, is normally treated as payment. So when assets have to be distributed, they can be distributed either in cash or it can be distributed in kind in assets, and therefore you find two words are used. You can use a company declared dividend. So out of three events, declared, distributed or paid, you find the treaty uses only the word paid. So as far as the treaty is concerned, the person, if you take the same example of L&T for a moment, if L&T declares the dividend in 1819 and that dividend is received by the non-resident in 1920 because it's paid in 1920, the event of taxation under the treaty is 1920. The event of taxation under domestic law is 1819, but because the treaty may give a more beneficial treatment to the shareholder, he can choose to apply the treaty and ignore the law. So we have to use the word paid because the term paid is also used in the Indian context. It uses paid also as one of the events. That means it is distinct from distribution, it is distinct from declaration. The physical payment is the payment aspect of it. Under the India treaty law, again it will be the physical payment which may come into the flow, and you can argue that this is not paid, this is not an event of this year, it is an event of next year. Taxation, if at all, has to be dealt with in the next year. All those arguments can flow as far as dividend is concerned. So as far as domestic law is concerned, 115O is levying what's called dividend distribution tax. So the taxation of dividend in our Indian law is on the company. The company pays a distribution tax. Currently it's about 18, the distribution tax, the rate of tax is 15%. Again we saw dividend has got 5 clauses. 4 clauses are dealing with accumulated profits. 1 clause is dealing with issuing loan. We call it as deemed dividend. And a deemed dividend is there's a shareholder of a closely held company. If you give a loan to the shareholder, that also would amount to dividend. And that's called, clause E of 222 is called deemed dividend. All other cases are called dividend proper. The 5th clause is called deemed dividend because the loan is treated as a dividend. All other cases involve distribution of accumulated profits and therefore it is a dividend proper. So clause A to D is dividend proper, clause E is deemed dividend. So in this context of 115O, you find that 15% is the rate of taxation which is applicable for classes A to D. 30% is the rate of taxation on clause E. So if a loan is given by a company which is a private company to its shareholders, that will be covered by clause E and the rate of taxation distribution tax will be 30%. This is a law change which has occurred from 2018 and is applicable for that as we speak. So that is the amount of distribution tax which the company will bear. There is no tax in the hands of a non-resident. The tax is borne. We are here looking at a dividend declared by an Indian company to a non-resident, cross-border. We are not looking at within the border. Distribution tax is applicable whether the recipient is resident or non-resident. It is not making any distinction. DDT is applied on the company. The company will have to pay this tax at this rate. It is not dependent on who the holder of share is, whether the share is held by the non-resident or the share is held by a resident. DDT will be paid by the company. But when the company has paid the tax, there is no further tax in India on the non-resident. But when it comes to resident, which is just I am mentioning as a matter of coverage, though it is not important in the context, the resident will also pay another 10% tax if the amount of dividend aggregates more than 10 lakhs per year. Except a company, all other resident persons will be liable to extra 10% tax. That is not relevant for this discussion. I am completing it just for being relevant to the subject. So as far as you are concerned, the DDT will be paid by the Indian company. The non-resident will not be liable to tax. But what is that will happen to the non-resident in his country? His country, suppose, taxes foreign dividend. I am a resident of US, PVS is a resident of US, he receives dividend from L&T. What will be the treatment of the dividend in the United States? United States is not going to look at the DDT paid in India. It may not, because DDT is a tax paid by the company, it's a tax levied on the company, it's not a tax levied on the shareholder. So, United States will say there is no tax in India, but as far as you are concerned, you have received dividend from India, so this dividend is taxable in the United States. Then the shareholder will be like, but my share has already suffered an economic tax in terms of distribution tax. Why don't you give me a credit? The United States may say, under the India-US treaty, there is no underlying tax credit mechanism. The tax paid by the company cannot be treated as tax paid by you in India. I will not be able to give you a foreign tax credit because this is not a tax paid by you in India. It's a tax paid by the company in India. Therefore, even though the dividend has suffered a tax, it is not a tax on the shareholder. The same income of the shareholder has not suffered two taxes, and therefore foreign tax credit cannot be given. Can be one argument which may emanate. So unless the domestic law of that country allows a foreign tax credit based on underlying tax principle, or the treaty allows an underlying tax credit based on underlying principle, you will always find that there will be some difficulty associated with DDT. DDT is a wonderful collection mechanism for the under the Indian tax law, but it creates cross-border tension because the same dividend will suffer two taxes, one in the hands of the company which is distributing, another in the hands of the shareholder who is residing in the foreign country, because he will be liable to tax in his country on the same dividend which has already suffered a DDT, unless we find an underlying tax mechanism to do it. And of course, there is a grossing up requirement, there are reductions and all. Those are all for holding companies, subsidiary company requirements. You get a little relief. Any dividend other than 115 more dividend will be liable to tax at 20% in the case of a non-resident or foreign company, or in the case of GDRs will be 10%. This is only for knowing that very rarely you will find a dividend which is not in the nature of 150O dividend. Today 115O covers all kinds of dividends, so you may not be visited with this situation at all. But if there is a dividend which is outside of 115O, then that may be liable to tax at 20% and 10%. There is a share buyback mechanism. What will happen? Instead of declaring dividend, I buy back the shares. Okay. I have accumulated profits. A Limited in India has accumulated profits. It has issued 100,000 shares. It wants to say all the shareholders I will buy. I will buy back the shares which you hold to the extent you want to tender. What happens? The same accumulated profits gets distributed. Instead of giving a dividend which attracts a distribution tax, the company has a buyback mechanism, and it converts into, earlier it used to convert into a capital gain event, because buyback means you are surrendering your share and taking consideration for the share. Surrender of share or extinguishment of a share amounts to a transfer under 247, and therefore buyback event was treated as a transfer under the old law. Today what happens, if you are an unlisted company and you are going to buy back shares, 115 QA section would trigger. It will levy a tax of 20% on distributed income. What is distributed income? Whatever money is paid in buyback, that amount will be taken, less the money which was received for those shares when it was issued will be deducted. The balance is distributed income. For example, I buy back shares at 1,000 rupees. I issued the share of 10 rupees at a premium of 90 to collect 100 rupees. The distributed income will be 1,000 minus 100. Because what is the money I collected at the point of issuance? I collected 10 rupees of face value, 90 rupees of premium, and 100 rupees I have collected at the point of issuance of share. What is the money I am paying back on buyback? I am paying 1,000. So 1,000 minus the money which was collected at the point of issuance of share, the balance amount is treated as buyback amount or distributed amount, and that would be liable to 20% tax. Which are the companies which will be affected? All companies which are engaged in buyback of shares other than listed companies on a recognized stock exchange. So unlisted companies, if they do a buyback, they have to make a distributed tax. What will be the consequence of this? Imagine A Inc. in the United States has invested money in its wholly owned subsidiary in India. The wholly owned subsidiary is very profitable, has accumulated profits. It wants to buy back the shares. That means the holding of A Inc. in the Indian company will come down because of share buyback. Because it's a share buyback by a company, the buyback tax of 20% will be levied. What will be the nature of income for the shareholder? It will be capital gain, because in this country it's a transfer of an asset. In India it's a distribution tax, and therefore you will find some difficulty in getting double tax credit again here. So the difficulty of dividend distribution tax will also be encountered as a difficulty in buyback tax. Taxation of dividends under DTAA. How the treaty taxes, the domestic law taxation we have looked at, that 115O levies a tax on distribution of dividend. Buyback is subject to buyback tax as distribution tax. Then dividend which is not covered by 115O, there are certain categories of taxation which is about 15%, 20%, all those things we have said. This is the domestic law taxation of dividend. That is the taxation, once it is dividend, once you know the source, then you tax it at the rate. The next one is how will the treaty tax it? Treaty says that normally it will be taxed in the country of recipient. That is, if the company is resident in a country and it distributes dividend, it is received in another country by a person resident in that country, then that country in which the person receiving is resident, that country can tax, may tax. So the right of taxation is first given to the recipient country. What's the source country going to do? The treaty further provides that the source country also may tax it if it so wants to, and therefore there is dual taxation. The recipient country has a right to tax and therefore it will tax. The paying country also has a right to tax and it says it also can tax. That means two taxes are created by the treaty, except that it says if you are a beneficial owner of the dividend, then the rate of tax shall be lower. In certain participation exemptions, they call, if you hold more than 10% of shares for X number of years or more than 1 year, then they will say it's a participation, lower rate of tax gets attracted. It is not relieving the taxation itself. What it is relieving is the quantum of tax by putting a lower rate of taxation, not the taxation right. So in any dividend, cross-border dividend, both countries have a right to tax. The paying country has a right to tax. The country in which the dividend is received is also has a right to tax. So you must find a mechanism of foreign tax credit, because two countries are taxing the same dividend, one in the paying country, one in the receiving country. Whereas the person who is resident now, the person who is receiving the dividend, you have to test the foreign tax credit in his hands, because the dividend, the source country is the paying country, the recipient country is the one which is where the dividend is received. The source country always has a right to tax. The recipient country has to give foreign tax credit. It will see whether the foreign tax credit comes. So in a DDT example which we took, the source country has taxed it but not taxed in the shareholder. In an Indian company, when it declares dividend, the source country has taxed it but it has not taxed the shareholder, it has taxed the company. So there is no tax on the source, on the shareholder. When the receiving country wants to tax the same dividend, it will find it difficult to get treaty credit, because the same income is not taxed in the same person's hands. They are taxed in two different persons and therefore you will not be able to get a credit. So you find that the treaty is a mechanism which says that double taxation is allowed through the Article 10, but Article 23 or 24 or 25 will give a relief for the foreign tax credit mechanism. So you have to treat the ability, what will be the rate of tax if there is a beneficial ownership and where there is a participation exemption available. If all these things are read into it, the domestic law of that country also may have a participation exemption when it declares. So you find that complexity comes when the cross-border dividend comes. The event of dividend is one, but the person who is receiving is a non-resident. Then you find that the treaty mechanism will have to be resorted to, otherwise it will result in double taxation. what will be the foreign dividend done in India? Normally, if an individual owns shares of a foreign company, the income will be income from other sources and it will be liable to tax in India at the normal rate. There are certain provisions which say that if an Indian company holds more than 26% in a foreign company and the foreign company declares the dividend which is received by the Indian company, then the rate of taxation is 15%. So other than this example where an Indian company which holds more than 26% in a foreign company receives dividend from that foreign company, then the rate of taxation is 15%. Other than this, all other shareholders who are receiving shares from a foreign company would be liable to tax at the normal rate. Whatever, suppose we are at the 36% tax rate, we will pay 36% fully. If you are at 20, depending on slab rates, individuals will pay. Otherwise, it is full taxation. So only concession which is given is when an Indian company holds more than 26% in a foreign company and the foreign company declares dividend, and that dividend when it is received by the Indian company will be entitled to, liable to tax at 15%. What will happen in this? Will the foreign company also as entitled, because that's the paying country, they will also tax the dividend. It's called withholding tax. The foreign country will withhold tax at the treaty rate whichever is applicable. Suppose you look at the India-US treaty in this case, the treaty will provide a 15% tax, so the United States will deduct or withhold tax at 15%. The dividend is received in India, India will tax at 15%. Is it 15 plus 15, 30? No. India will give a foreign tax credit for the 15 which is paid in the United States, and therefore net of foreign tax credit, it will be zero taxation in India because the amount of foreign tax paid in the United States is available as a credit under the Article 25. So you have to look at the mechanism of foreign tax credit when two levels of taxation are levied. So I have possibly covered.
Can I have? How does the two countries set off the tax credits?
The tax credit is always given by the resident country. The source country has a right to tax, resident country has an obligation to relieve the double tax. So suppose you are a resident in India, you receive dividend from United States of a company in the United States of America. Who is received the income? You as a resident has received the income. As a paying country, the United States would have deducted tax called withholding tax or TDS as we understand. That 15% is the treaty rate which is provided. We saw one of the articles at 10, 20, 15, so those rates will be applied. You are the beneficial owner of the dividend. Therefore, United States will deduct 15% from your dividend. But because United States has dividend withheld 15%, in your return, you will show the income of dividend from the foreign company at gross level. You will say this is the amount of tax. Suppose $100 is declared, $15 is withheld, $85 comes to you. In your return, you will show $100 as the income translated to rupee, applying 150 or rule. Once you have translated rupee, you will calculate the tax under the Indian law. For you, Indian law is going to levy 30%. You are a normal tax resident. Now, after you calculate the Indian tax liability, you will get foreign tax credit as one entry in the return. That will be using Form 67. You will make an application saying that this dividend has suffered a tax in the United States. Gross dividend was 100, 15 was deducted, only 85 has come to my bank account. But I have taken 100 as my dividend, and therefore 15 will be taken as foreign. So essentially, you will suffer 30% tax in India, but you will give a credit of 15%, and your effective net tax will be only 30 minus 15. This is how it works.
So you say as per the return, $15 is still with the US government.
That's correct.
And paying another equivalent $15 to the Indian government. So which government should have the $30 taxation? Will it be shared between the
No, that is internationally, there is a taxation principle of apportionment. They divide the taxation upfront. So there is no further barter. There can be trade exchanges between the two countries. Normally it is looked at that this is how we will tax dividend between the country. Your country will tax me like this, our country will tax you like this. It is an understanding. A treaty is an understanding. So there is no money exchange. It is not that India will pay something to the US. It is not a state For example, if the central government collects taxes, it is distributed to the states through a finance commission allocation mechanism. That's an internal matter. In cross-border, no money flows. So nothing reverts. The tax collected is collected. US will retain 15% because they will say I am entitled to that 15 because the source is in my country. India will say I am entitled to 30, but I will give you credit for 15. That's the mechanism. Any other question? I have completed. I have completed dividend. Once you have understood dividend, you will understand interest also in the same wavelength because it is equally easy. If I have to summarize only few things, let us summarize here. We have to understand what is the source of dividend. The source of dividend we understood has got two principles. Place of incorporation of the company is one principle. The place where the company is resident is the other principle. Place of incorporation is usually a domestic law which is true even under the Income Tax Act. The place where the company is resident is a treaty principle. So you may find a conflict that the place of incorporation and the place where the company is resident may be different because the residence is based on place of effective management. Incorporation is based on the law under which you are incorporating. So you find there's a conflict which is possible to know the source itself. Assuming that you know the source, next you have to find out what is dividend, whether what you have received is dividend or interest. The domestic law of dividend is distribution of accumulated profits. The treaty law of dividend is also distribution of accumulated profits. But if there are participating interest, even a debt can be treated as dividend. Debt payments can be treated as dividend. Likewise, a preferred share may be treated as a debt. Debt can be treated as a equity. That kind of a mechanism is possible under the treaty. So you will find a dividend may take the character of interest or interest may take the character of dividend under the treaty law. So the characterization change may happen under the treaty. And you can take the benefit of the treaty in case you are entitled. Third one is, how will India tax? When will India tax? India will tax based on three events: declaration, distribution or paid, whichever is earlier. Treaty will tax it when it is paid. So again you have got a difference between when it will be taxed. Treaty taxes only when it is paid, but domestic law has three events whichever occurs earlier. If there is a gap between the two, you can rely on the treaty to take it to the year in which it is paid if it is beneficial to you. The fourth concept which I talked about is that how will the domestic law finally tax it? If it is a 115O, if an Indian company makes a distribution, the DDT is levied. For the foreign dividend which is coming into you, if you have got 26%, if you are an Indian company and you have got 26% holding in the foreign company, then section 115 BPD can be applied and you can invoke the 15% rate of that. If the same dividend is taxed in two countries, then you can apply the treaty mechanism to see that you get a relief of foreign tax credit. Which country will give the relief? The resident country where the income is received will give the credit. The source country in which the dividend originates will levy the tax. The source country has a priority to levy tax. The resident country has an obligation to give relief of foreign tax. This is how it works. If I have to say, this is a summary of dividend, that we don't have to look at beyond dividend on this aspect. Interest we look at. Interest again, I told you have to look at the debt under the domestic law. Treaty law look at the payer. What is interest under the law? If you just look at 228A defines the term interest. It's an interest payable any manner in respect of any money is borrowed or debt incurred. So it is attaching the interest to the instrument. The treaty law, if you go next step, you will see likewise interest on security. Interest on security is attached to the payer. If you look at it is by government, it is by corporation. So if your interest on securities is attached to the payer, because security is always issued by an institution. Debt can be always be taken by a non-institution also. That is, I can take a loan. Loan-related debt is also interest. But security, for example, bond is a security. A bond is always attached to the institution. So you find there's a difference between the two in the Indian law. The bond-related security interest is related to the issuer. The other debt, which is not securities, is related to the debt. So there is a fine where the interest gets attached as a source. You find that the domestic law makes a distinction between the two. How will the treaty look at? Income from Article 11. includes, if you look at the nature of interest is fine, but you will find that the interest paid will be the basis. Finally, it will boil down to interest paid. So the treaty normally looks at the payer and it does not look at the source of the underlying debt. 145 allows, unlike a dividend, which does not give you an option to when to tax, it will be taxed as per the event defined under the Act. The domestic law for interest allows you an option to elect either a cash method of accounting or accrual method of accounting, but you cannot choose source-wise. You have to choose for the entire head of income. You cannot say under income from other sources, for this source it will be cash basis, for this source it will be mercantile. That is not allowed to you. You have to follow the mercantile system of accounting. 9176 says, now how is the interest tax? Now, unlike dividend, which is taxed on how the recipient is going to receive, the interest is being taxed based on how the payer is going to treat. Who pays is what is relevant than what the recipient is. So in India, interest will be taxed based on who the payer is. If the payer is government, it is the interest sourced in India. If the payer is resident with exceptions, for example, if you are carrying on business outside India, then the interest for that business will be kept out of the exception, so it is not liable to tax. But if the payer is resident, then that interest is sourced in India. If the payer is non-resident and if the interest is attributable to business carried on in India, then it will be sourced in India. So you have to look at the payer to understand where the source is as far as the domestic law. Some synergy. Unlike dividend, you find that the interest is slightly better placed than dividend is as far as the source is concerned. The domestic law also says please look at the payer and find out the source as far as the domestic interest source is concerned. What is DTA saying? Section Article 11 typically will say interest arising in a contracting state and paid to a resident of the other contracting state. This is how it works. So you find, I may not deal with the distribution of taxes, they are all found, the sections are applicable, we have to go into the instrument and find the taxes. Some are 20%, some are 5% withholding tax, concession rates, all these are for interest received, interest paid out of India. That is, if the source is in India, the recipient is outside India, what will be the rate of tax in these circumstances? That is all, because non-resident is receiving the interest, then based on that differential rates are provided. The source of interest is in India, the recipient is outside India, what will be the rate of taxes is what covered under 115A, different sections. I am not going to cover the details of the rates because that is available. We will now come to capital gain. I will another 5 minutes, I will close the capital gain part, you will be able to look at it. Okay, what is capital gain? Capital gain means there should be a capital asset and there should be a transfer of that capital asset. So capital gain arises when there is a divestment of the capital asset. So the instruments which yielded dividend, the instrument which yielded interest, when it is divested, you may get a capital gain. That is the way the law looks at it. Now, most DTAs say that for taxation of capital gains, apply the domestic law. Most treaties will say, please look at the domestic law of the country, wherever, whatever is the domestic law, apply it. That is why I talked about a conflict. If there is a share of an Indian company held by a US resident, there is a conflict because the source for the Indian law is the capital asset of the Indian company. The source for the United States is the holder of the share, and therefore you have got a source conflict there. What is capital asset? It includes securities, and therefore there is the definition of capital asset. What are the rates of capital asset? If a foreign non-resident holds asset in India, capital asset in the form of securities in India, the rate of taxation is given. Sometimes it is 10%, sometimes 30%, depends on length of holding. You get a concession usually only for long-term holding. You don't get a concession for short-term holding. One important concession is that if a non-resident holds shares in an unlisted company and he holds it as a long-term asset that is more than 2 years, a resident normally will be liable to tax at 20%, but non-resident will be liable to tax only at 10%. So the most important concession for a non-resident is that for unlisted shares, he gets a lower rate of taxation, which is 10%, while a resident in similar circumstances will pay 20% tax. This is the only concession which I look at. The treaty may shift the obligation. We did say the asset in an Indian company is held. Where is the source of the asset? Where is the asset located? Situs of the asset. If a company is incorporated in India, the share is also located in India as per the Indian law understanding. There are certain treaties which says that we will shift the source to the country in which the person alienating the share is there. There are many treaties in the law where you can look at that the country where the person alienating the share is the place where the source of income arises. So the treaty can shift the source from India to the foreign country based on the residential status of the owner of the asset in that foreign country. He should be a resident of that country. Then the treaty can be applied to say, even though it is an Indian share, it is a share of an Indian company. The treaty says that the source will be shifted to the foreign country. It says it will be shifted to the place where the alienator of the share is resident. Automatically it is a foreign country which will be entitled to the share. And you find the India-Mauritius treaty before it was grandfathered. India-Singapore treaty before it was grandfathered had these provisions, and therefore it was shifting any share which is acquired by a Singapore company in India, Indian company, by a Singapore resident in an Indian company. If it is held prior to 1st April 2016, capital gain arising out of transfer of that share will be taxable only in Mauritius or Singapore. It will not be taxable in India. That means the source is India normally under the domestic law. The treaty shifts the source to the foreign country in which the person is resident. This is a summary of what I told, which is the Mauritius Treaty and Singapore Treaty. Shares acquired prior to 1/4/2017, because after that there is a grandfathering of the treaty, and any asset acquired after that, the normal principles of taxation as we understand will apply. This is a specific. There are other countries where alienation principle continues. We can track that. So for example, I think at the best of my knowledge, India-France treaty is based on alienation principle. Valuation, it comes only in 3 parts. Why is valuation important? When an asset is transferred, capital asset is transferred, 56(2)(10) now says that if the asset is transferred without consideration or inadequate consideration, then the fair market value minus the consideration shall be treated as income from other sources. What is the section saying? From one person to another person. So what is a person? Person is always non-resident, also a person. So if a non-resident transfers a share or security, what will be the situation? Whether there will be meeting the consideration that is transferred for inadequate consideration or no consideration. You look at the table below, transferor, transferee, underlying asset. If the transferor is resident and the transferee is non-resident, then if the transfer is done for inadequate consideration, the non-resident will be liable to tax because he receives an asset for less than fair value. He is the transferee. In his hands there will be income from other sources arising out of this transaction. The underlying asset can be anywhere. It can be in India, it can be anywhere, even a foreign currency. If the resident makes a transfer to a non-resident and it is for inadequate consideration, then it will be liable to tax in the hands of the non-resident. With one caution which I will possibly say, we have to go to income from other sources or other sources under the Indian, other income under the treaty to see where the taxation can happen. If the treaty says other income will be taxed as per domestic law, then this taxation will be done by the Indian government under the income tax law. If the treaty says that the other income will be taxable in the country in which the person receiving the income is there, then India cannot tax that transaction and it will go over the fold of taxation. Second category is non-resident transferor, resident transferee, it will be taxable. So you cannot receive a gift from a non-resident. You cannot buy a share for less than adequate consideration. So non-resident transferor, resident transferee, the transferee is a resident, so he will be liable to income from other sources and he will have to include the differential amount into his return. Third category is non-resident transferor and non-resident transferee, and in that case, if the shares are located in India, then only it can be taxed. Otherwise, it cannot be taxed. If the shares are located outside India, then it cannot be taxed. So this is the principle on which 56(2)(10) will apply. 3 situations is fairly exhaustive to cover all the circumstances. Valuation, we will not talk about these issues, they are not related to shares. other income tax. For example, India USDT, other income, it says income taxable as per domestic law, except where the income arises in the other country. So domestic law will be that here the US law will say the person who is receiving the income will be liable to tax in the United States. So it may still go out of the Indian taxation if the treaty gives a relief under that mechanism. International transaction, little on transfer pricing. Capital financing is also liable to transfer pricing. If there is a transaction in securities between a resident and his AE, two AEs, then transfer pricing provisions will apply. We have to find the arm's length price of the transaction, and we have to do raising of capital also may be treated as an international transaction. For example, if the company raises equity from foreign shareholders, 5627B may not apply, but the fact that the company is raising money from a foreign AE, which is related, and the AE is infusing, for example, Vodafone infused money into Indian Vodafone, there was a controversy whether the premium should be liable to tax because it was not fair valued. The Bombay High Court said that the premium does not constitute an income, it is in the capital field and it should not be liable to tax. But Bombay High Court nevertheless said that it is an international transaction. So you find it's an international transaction under the transfer pricing regulations, and it should be liable to arm's length pricing. So it is always guarded that when you are reporting international transaction involving collection of money relatable to securities, you cover it in international taxation transaction disclosure, or have a suitable position to ensure that your reporting is complete. Arm's length principle, whether it will apply or not, if it is a transfer of between two, if there is a security already existing and there is a transfer between AE and non-AE, then that is an international transaction. Only at the point of raising money or money comes into the company, you may be landing with a situation that it may be having an argument that is not liable to A and B. RBI Master Circular, essentially it says, I will not deal too much because I want to complete the slide. You need a valuation certificate from the CA, either outbound or inbound. When you are dealing with non-residents, the transaction should be done at fair value, fair market value. The certification has to be done by a chartered accountant, or it has to be done by a merchant banker which is registered with SEBI. So whoever can do, under the income tax law, CAs can certify now only if there is a secondary transaction, that is transfer between a security already existing. If the company is raising money, you cannot certify under 56(2). You can only certify if there is a transfer of an existing share. Then only the book value method can be applied. CAs can certify. CA cannot certify if money is raised and discounted cash flow method is applied to find the valuation mechanism. So that you need a merchant banker. But RBI allows CA to do both jobs. There are how RBI allows inward investments outward. Outward investment is covered by two regulations. LRS for individuals, that is liberalized remittance scheme for individuals. Annually you can use $250,000 to invest abroad and acquire. It's a combination of many limits. $250,000 is the maximum amount you can acquire shares in a foreign country per individual per financial year. Under ODA mechanism, you can invest up to 400,000 times, four times your net worth. A company carrying on or any institution carrying on business can invest 4 times its net worth outside India. Then foreigners can invest under portfolio in foreign FPI. They can invest in FDI. They can invest in FPI. They can invest in multiple mechanisms. FII rules are different. Similarly, you find multiple regulations applicable. As far as outward investment is concerned, only two regulations apply, ODI and LRS. As far as investment remittances are concerned, normally it's FPI or FDI. Other mechanism, you have to be a qualified person to come into that mechanism. For example, foreign institutional investor has certain qualifications, he can come differently. But otherwise, there are only two mechanisms for inward coming, either it's FPI or it's FDI. That's my. So I think my presentation is complete on all aspects which I wanted to cover. If you find this presentation can be circulated to participants, correct? I leave it to you.
Uploading the website.
Yeah, they will be uploading. You can access the presentation. Some aspects of wordiness I have not covered for the only reason it will be too intricate to go into the words of what is specified. You can leisurely go through the presentation. Give the concept. Now, concept is that 3 sources of income, 3 kinds of income, and valuation. Three kinds of income, what kind of conflicts can come. Once you know the conflicts, you know how to resolve the conflict using the treaty mechanism. That's all in the presentation. Hope you liked it. I am happy to take one or two questions in case. I covered ahead of time.
Yeah, on time.
Any questions? No questions, we'll wind up and go and see the one-day match if it's still there.
Thank you very much, sir, for such a good and insightful session on cross-border transactions. So I would like to thank our speaker on behalf of Bangalore branch and the audience, and I request the chairman to come and give the memento as a gift, as a token of gratitude. Please give a big round of applause for today's speaker. I would like to also thank other speakers of today's session, CA Rudramurthy PV and CA Anil Bhardwaj and CA Anjali Ketan for all the contributions to the institute, and also the Committee on Capital Market and Investor Protection who has been coordinating with the institute for providing such a good program on investor awareness program. And I would like to thank the audience. Because of you, it has been a very successful seminar today. And I would like to request each and every one of the members, if there is any area of improvement in the sessions or the institute, please come and please email us on the email IDs or just drop down a message to us so that we can improve on those sessions. Also, with this we will be concluding today's sessions. Next, okay, we have next seminar happening on March 23rd, which is on bank branch audit. March 8th.
Backside. Backside of the same. Oh, brochure. The brochure.
Excuse me.
TDS.
TDS. Okay, we have a session on TDS on March 8th. Please do come and make it another successful event.
March 8th is involving department people also. Commissioner is coming, so you will get a wider appreciation of TDS.
Okay, it's a 3-hour seminar happening on, it's called Mantana. It's a half-day seminar on TDS. It's an interaction with TDS officials. The speakers are DR Venkatesh and CA Sandeep C. Please do come and register and please do attend a particular session. And we conclude this session now. And any feedback, please let us know on the email IDs. Thank you. Bank branch. Okay, there's another seminar happening on bank branch on March 23rd at the Hotel Chancery Pavilion, Residency Road. The eminent speakers like P.R. Suresh and Shabram Jani and Vittal Raj and A.V. Pai is the speaker. Please do register for that also. Online registers are already open for this. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for patient listening and participation. Happy evening.
Thank you.